Hello, today is Wednesday, November 13th, and welcome to episode 384 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Lester Munson. I'm joined today by NSI's Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, NSI Fellow Jessica Jones, and NSI Senior Fellow Morgan Vina, our all-star lineup for you folks. We're here to talk about the incoming national security cabinet for President-elect Trump. And we're recording this Wednesday morning at about 9 a.m. It's possible there will be developments in the next 2 hours before this thing actually gets published on your favorite podcast platform. So bear with us. Here's what we know. Marco Rubio has been leaked strongly as the candidate for Secretary of State, but not actually nominated by the president-elect. Michael Waltz, a congressman from Florida, has been officially named as the president's national security advisor. He does not face Senate confirmation for that job, so he is probably going to get that in almost 99.9% chance. Late last night, we learned Pete Hegseth, a commentator, a newsreader, a journalist on Fox News Weekend, is going to be nominated, I think officially, for Secretary of Defense, a very surprising name. Also, before all of this happened, we heard that Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is in House Republican leadership, is going to be nominated by the president to be ambassador to the United Nations. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of things in motion. Morgan, I want to go to you first. You know US-UN better than anyone. And of course, US-UN means the US mission to the United Nations in New York City. What do you think of the Elise Stefanik pick?
I don't think Trump could have picked a better nominee for the U.S. permanent representative to the UN. Stefanik clearly has robust foreign policy, national security bona fides. She not only sits on the House Armed Services Committee, but she is in House leadership, conference chair. She, at the time she was elected, she was the youngest person ever serving in Congress. She's got a ton of really remarkable experience. I think a lot of folks will recall her leadership this past year regarding the universities and the anti-Semitism on campus, and how she really sort of led a campaign against anti-Semitism, and resulted in several college university presidents being ousted. So clearly she's going to be a true leader and backer of Israel at, frankly, one of the most anti-Semitic international bodies, which is the United Nations. So she's going to be a strong supporter for Israel there. But I think she will also really take a hard look at what U.S. national security interests are, and actually use the United Nations to pursue them, which it would be a dramatic turn from what we're seeing currently, which is just a real continuation of the status quo.
Martha, what are your thoughts about this growing group and kind of changing group of what is likely to be senior American foreign policy and national security officials with respect to Ukraine? Does it tell us anything about what's going to happen in the next weeks and months with respect to how the U.S. is handling the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
So obviously, a lot of people are nervous about Ukraine because of the statements Donald Trump has made as a presidential candidate, and even when he was not a presidential candidate and in his tenure as president. That being said, I was actually encouraged to see Mike Waltz being announced, and Senator Rubio being announced. Both of them have been pretty hawkish when it comes to Russia, although they did temper their sentiments in recent months on Ukraine. But at the same time, I think the concern really has more to do with the stalemate that we're funding, as opposed to a fundamental problem with supporting Ukraine. So I think what that could look like is, maybe easing off of the handcuffs that we've put on Ukraine in terms of the weapons that we have supplied, because that is one thing the Biden administration, unfortunately, did not give them the license to do what they could do with these weapons. And that's why we're in the stalemate. So, I'm not so sure that this is marking it like a problem for Ukraine. Also, I think our European counterparts should be reassured that Marco Rubio had led an effort last year to pass an amendment in the Senate on the defense bill to prevent any U.S. president from pulling out of NATO. So I think we have people who are committed to our alliances, committed to standing up against our foes, and who recognize that Russia is not our friend.
Jones, want your thoughts on like the totality of these picks. It seems like these are well outside the usual suspects here in Washington. The one who might come the closest is Rubio. The rest of these picks kind of signal a shakeup as to how the U.S. conducts foreign policy and national security strategy in the world, and that's not a total surprise given the things that the president-elect said during the campaign and some of the failures of the Biden administration. How do you think this is going to end up working? And maybe even talk about Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, which really seems like a total surprise to everyone. Is this going to work?
A magic 8 ball when asking about the Trump administration. That is impossible in a way.
Please try.
I learned a lot actually about Martha yesterday when we were talking about this, and I learned that she loves parlor games. So this is like her in her heyday talking about these movements of folks. I think that if you look at social media when it comes to responses to these candidates, they are a little more traditional than I think presumably some of President-elect Trump voters wanted. Like you've got a sitting senator, sitting congressman who are known within party leadership, right? So they seem a little more traditional. Hawks on China, have been, supportive of Ukraine. To your point, Pete Hegseth, and I did have to look up how to pronounce his name because I don't watch Fox and Friends on the weekends. That's the one that stands out as kind of being out of left field. He seems more in line with the press secretary than Secretary of Defense. It's a large part of the U.S. budget. It's got the department has almost 3 million employees. It's got a budget over $700 billion. Like 700 million. It's a large department. He has not much experience, I would say, in executive running a large organization. Of course, is a veteran with over 20 years of service and capable in many ways, but being able to understand, grand strategy, budget and resource management, coordination amongst government agencies, legal and ethical rules pertaining to how the department operates, that seems a question mark. And so even though the Senate Republicans have control of both chambers at the moment, it seems, or will likely in control of the Senate, we'll see what kind of reception he gets. I think there was a lot of some surprised senators when his name got announced. So he might have some kind of headwinds against him when it comes to the confirmation process, but who knows? I think like anything when it comes to the Trump administration, it's wondering how much say any of these individuals have when it comes to policy positions, how they can, if they want, bring conflicting views, how those are respected and how long they last. We've seen in the last administration that there was turnover in some of these positions. So these might just be the first folks sitting in the seat.
I'd like to chime in 1 second.
Go ahead, Morgan.
I want to chime on the Hegseth nomination. Because I think it's worth noting here that, obviously the Senate's going to have to do their due diligence and vet and confirm and all of that. They're the ones that make that decision, right? Not not us, right? Not us sort of like chit-chatting on a podcast. But what I will say is...
Can we change that, by the way? Is there something we could do to adjust that situation?
The Senate voting on that. So I don't know if we're going to get support.
But so Les, here's my response to Jessica, and that is Trump is taking a rapid departure from his first choice as the Secretary of Defense in the previous administration. General Mattis clearly had to get a waiver. There was this very, very military leadership over over OSD, which is supposed to be, according to our Constitution, civilian-led, right? That the military really has taken on a larger role within the Department of Defense, which is supposed to be a civilian-run agency, right? And we saw the deterioration in the relationship with Mattis. We've seen the deterioration with the relationship with the military brass and Donald Trump. And so I think it's a non-traditional pick, but I also understand why Trump's doing a complete 180 here and going in a very, very different direction. Again, the Senate's going to have to do its due diligence and determine whether or not, he is the right pick, right? To lead the department. But ultimately, like I kind of get why Trump is going this route.
But for a minute, is the reason why he's going this route is because he's almost in a way forced to, because if he were actually to pick a more traditional pick, who's left to pick from? Like, who would he have? Who would listen to him? Who would stay in that position? So to me, picking someone who's less experience is a way to make someone more of a lackey and more sure that he's going to go in the direction that you were aiming him at, right?
According to my intense research this morning on Wikipedia, Pete Hegseth played basketball at Princeton University. Princeton actually has a robust basketball history. There was a guy named Pete Carroll who coached there for a long time, and they were known for tough defense. So maybe this guy is
back to basketball.
This guy might be a really good pick. I think perhaps more seriously, perhaps not, but perhaps more seriously, countries who are tracking the incoming administration and these personnel decisions should be on their toes and should be aware that there are going to be a lot of changes in the way the U.S. conducts business abroad. Some of them, I think, are going to be very welcome. Some of them are going to cause some trouble for our friends and allies. And the president-elect is clearly doubling down on a lot of things he talked about during the campaign, and we should all kind of deal with that as adults. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Devlin Burney, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for the help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Friday, November 15th, for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. Fault Lines is on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.